sometimes when you prepare for a conversation, you come up with a lot of questions because you have a pre-conversation where suddenly within half an hour we have touched like so many big topics, and we were just making fun of about it, like that there's so many questions we probably can do a 3-hour conversation, which that's not our purpose today. We're trying to get it into a normal commute conversation, but there's so much great content we'll talk about with today's guests. And we're gonna start with actually talking about a lot about how can hospitality businesses serve as a vehicle for positive change in this world of extreme uncertainty and complexity, and already an industry where I think lots of people I talk with find it challenges to be a leader. And we will talk about how do you practice what we call here in Hospitality Maverick. I call it graceful growth, actually growth that takes consideration to all stakeholders, and including the planet. We're going to talk about human-centered service. We're going to talk about hospitality as a craft, and we hopefully touch a bit on AI, and then also how do we actually facilitate plant-based futures. And then if we're very lucky, we can also talk about how leading yourself in all this chaos. So it's a big agenda we have on today. Welcome to the show, Jannes.
Thank you, Michael. Let's get at it.
Yes. And we start with very simple, because I think there's always a context, there's always a story. What is your story, and what led you to build a hotel group and an international hospitality academy?
Well, yeah, thank you. I think in general, my sort of journey in hospitality started with a client, went to the team, and sort of now has evolved to purpose. So I started, like many young hospitality leaders, as an apprentice in a hotel. I've seen sort of, all corners of a grand luxury hotel in Berlin, became a concierge here, also in Berlin, then started to travel as a concierge through Paris, Barcelona. I became the assistant head concierge at the Plaza Hotel in New York in my mid-20s, which was a bit odd, to be honest, but a wonderful experience, and has clearly shaped me as not only a leader, but an individual. Around that time in New York, managing a team of very talented and very passionate people, many of, twice my age, if not 3 times my age, really shifted my focus from, sort of the delight to be in the position to work with guests, welcome guests, look after guests, to then realizing there's just so much you can do as an individual, and how meaningful it seemed to be able to assist a larger group of people to look after the clients that you care so much for. So that was really the progression into leadership. Wasn't so much the title or to get more money. It was really sort of, how can I care more? How can I look sort of, after more people? How can I extend, the sort of the care that I had for clients? And it was an incredible and humble experience to that in New York. And that was really when I decided not to remain a concierge. And it was a big decision, because the concierge is a beautiful profession. And I think it's really down to my head concierges, Raphael Palais in New York, Roderick Levejac in Paris, Raffaele Sorrentino in Berlin, that were really sort of the shoulders on which I stand today, mentors, leaders, conversation partners of incredible depth. And after New York, I decided to sort of step back, don't become a head concierge, but become a supervisor at the reception desk of the Connaught Hotel in London, which is in many ways, many steps back, not only from, the way I would live, but, really like I would go from an apartment in the West Village to a flat share in Stockwell. But it was very, it felt very natural. I loved my time at the Connaught. I met a wonderful leader in Anthony Lee shortly, and then Natalie Seiler, who was the general manager there at the time. And the Connaught still is a property of the Mayborn Hotel Group, a wonderful group in London and right now global. At the time, they were only London-based hotels. And so I progressed through the ranks and became a reception manager and a rooms director, moved to France to work at the Bristol as a director of rooms. And then, in my very early 30s, I received a call to say if I want to apply for a position in London that opened up in a newly opened hotel called the Beaumont Hotel in Mayfair, which I obviously was aware of because we saw it being built when I was working at the Connaught. And what had happened was that many of my former team would have started to work at the Beaumont, and when the visionary founder of the Beaumont, Jeremy King, was looking for a new general manager, some of his team suggested that it might be a good idea to speak to me, which again was a bit odd because I was 33, had no GM experience, never been a hotel manager. Really, on paper, I was clearly not qualified for this. But it's like I was thinking, well, the position where you're in charge of caring for everybody, I mean, what better job is there, right? It was really sort of very close to the mission that led me into leading people and being a manager. And it fit like a glove. I mean, lots of things I had to learn, a lot of cold water, but Jeremy King is really a lighthouse figure in not only restaurants, but hotels, and a great mentor, a great soundboard, sort of another head concierge in a way that was there out of a sudden, almost like, and I had 5.5, 6 wonderful years. And really sort of like 3-4 years in, I had other opportunities and other hotels who would call, and I was very humbled by this, but I sort of said, well, I'm already working at the Grand Hotel Budapest, why go somewhere else? And it sort of was already lingering for me to say, what's the outcome of this? Like, what do we generate? Like, what are we doing this for? You have a hotel that runs well, that has happy clients, happy owners, you have a good team, you go there in the morning, you go back at night, and you get a TripAdvisor review or whatever. And I was always thinking, what are we doing with this? And in London, there is a wonderful organization called the W1 Club, which is a group of leading general managers in the postcode of W1 in London. And we would meet once a month. We would work on topics that, were important to us as hoteliers. In Westminster, we would obviously speak to the local governments, we would speak to hospitality organizations, to the national governments a lot during COVID. But even in this group, we were always speaking about business-related or quite immediate, quite tangible, quite objective agenda points that we had a common interest. But I was sitting in this, group of people very often and thinking there's some of the most respected hoteliers in the world sitting in this room. We have, the world's most influential clients staying in one of our hotels every year. What are we doing with this? What are we trying to change? What do we stand for? And I didn't know. So I turned 40. I became a father. Some might say I had a midlife crisis, but it was sort of the lack of motivation, or like for me, that I couldn't make sense of going to the next bigger and better hotel. And I decided at the time just to not go to another hotel, but we have a wonderful ownership group at the Beaumont Hotel that has allowed a lot of the team, all of the team, stay employed during COVID. And they did a wonderful renovation of the Beaumont. And there was this period when the vaccines came out in February of 21, where I felt there's a window for me right now to go and to allow the ownership group to find another GM with a hotel that's still closed in the middle of a renovation. And I wouldn't have wanted to reopen the hotel and then leave and sort of leave them in the difficult situation to have a running hotel with a change of GM. So there was this window of opportunity. I said to my wife, Maria, at the time, it's like, I need to think now. Thinking is expensive and I need to do it. And I need to figure out what I'm going to do with the next decades of this working life. So we moved to France and spent 2 years, 2.5 years in the southwest of France, spent a lot of time with our son. And I very quickly started thinking about what it was that I couldn't find in the other bigger, better hotel. A lot of thoughts around hospitality. What's my impact in hospitality? What's my contribution? Because that was, I guess, the deciding factor in this change was that I didn't know what I was contributing to. Like there was no clear sense of what my output was as the GM. And then the journey began, and we'll talk about it today. Created Kepler. Go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, and then what is it then you've created, or you are building, I would rather say, because it's probably a masterpiece that's never going to finish, but that's how it is often when you become founder or something. It's a thing you're facilitating, I almost call it. And I've heard other founders talk about it in the same way. So what is it that you are building right now?
Yeah. It's quite funny, actually. I think there's a lot of things founders do in common. Like one of the things I always talk about we do, but that was only me. But I always said we, because it feels a little less lonely at the beginning. So I wrote down of what I feel the future of hospitality is. It's about creating a hospitality company that understands the world, understands the clients, and creates hospitality that enables a positive future. I think that in hospitality, we're very good in giving clients what they want. I would argue we're not so good in giving them what they need. And a lot of the luxury hospitality industry is in many ways portraying, idealizing a way of living that is inherently unsustainable. And today what we're trying to do is to sort of say, well, we're idealizing this idea of success. We're idealizing this ideal of the ultimate luxury experience with all the, excess and consumption that comes with it. But we, recycle our plastic, or we don't have, plastic bottles. But that's really sort of tinkering around the edges. And what I feel strongly about is that we don't need to add another committee around sustainability. We don't need to sort of have another discussion of how important sustainability is. I think we need to change the very nature of what we aspire to, what we want from life. If we want the unsustainable thing, but the sustainability committee says we can't have it, that's obviously a system that hasn't worked, right? Because if you look, we're 2025 and it almost feels we're post-sustainability, right? Everybody's eating more meat. Everybody's like, we have so many problems. Let's not, it's not almost anti-sustainability, it's we're post it. Like people don't want to talk about it anymore. And that has a lot to do with it being not aspirational. It's always been the compromise. It's always been the thing one should do, but not what people really aspire to. And luxury hospitality is always a concept for people who can't afford it. It's not so much a concept for people who can afford it. There is a term that's called miswanting. And the term miswanting describes what guests or a population as such think they want, but not really what they need. It's a concept that's been developed by Danny Gilbert and Timothy Wilson. And in many ways, clever marketing in the 1950s and 60s has led us to believe that we can buy ourselves out of the misery, and that the luxury experience or the access of material stuff makes us happy. And luxury hospitality is really the pinnacle of all of this, like the absolute idealized form of what this life should look like. So as long as we don't change the lighthouse, people will still aim towards that lifestyle. And I think that's the conundrum that we're in. And the interesting element of this is, Michael, that science has clearly proven that this stuff doesn't make us happy, right? There is a concept called hedonic adaptation. It's a concept that was done by Philip Brickman, Dan Coates, and the third, Ronnie Janoff-Bullman. And it speaks about like the fact that when we get things, we have this expectation that it makes us happy, but then we realize that it doesn't. It's the same that we have this expectation that something makes us really unhappy, but then we realize it doesn't. So, you know, you have one guy who wins in the lottery, the other one breaks his leg, and they're in a very different place. But 6 months down the line, they're actually not happier or unhappier.
No.
And what we have, though, is, you know, a positive psychologist called Martin Seligman, who speaks about a model called the PERMA model. It's about positive emotion, engagement, relationship, meaning, and a sense of accomplishment, which really makes people happy. So the question is, what is a hotel, right? What are we trying to do? And that's the foundation of Kepler. Give people what they need and not what they want, because we're perpetuating a system that clearly doesn't work.
Yeah, and I guess what you're challenging is as well is the overconsumptions of meaningless stuff. I just need more stuff. I need to have more stuff from Amazon. I need to, you know, this consumerism kind of model that's been built around whatever we do, if it's hotel, restaurants, things we need to buy, going into the supermarket. We always been meant to buy more stuff because you need it to find meaning or be happy or whatever kind of thing. And actually the meaning is actually in you find meaning in challenging the status quo and actually building something that does a different. And how do you express that to your businesses then? How do you make that happen? Because that's like, you know, if you go into any business school, they'll say, well, it's all about selling more growth, more sales. That's what it's about. That's why you're building a business.
So what you were saying at the moment is actually quite interesting, because it's also been studied quite a lot. It calls forecasting errors. Yeah. So humans tend to do forecast errors. So we think that the Ferrari will make us happy, right? And then we get the Ferrari and we're like, oh, this doesn't feel like I wanted it, right? Or we go to the hotel with the infinity pool, you know, and then we're there and we're like, is this it? You know, like, it doesn't make me feel the way I thought it will. Yeah. So, you know, business is always about value. It is just that we live in a society where over the last decades, things that were difficult to attain, EA material stuff, was associated with luxury, because not everybody could have a Hermes bag or a Ferrari or, you know, fly around the world. But we live in times where, you know, we will get to energy independence. We will get to free manual labor through AI and robotics. I'm not saying 2026, but it will happen. You know, people always underestimate what will happen long term and overestimate what will happen short term. Yeah. And so there's energy, free labor, and artificial intelligence. So the element of luxury defined as something that's difficult to attain will change fundamentally, because everybody will be able to get anything. It's a bit like ChatGPT changed the paradigm of knowledge to be power, right? Today, knowledge is not really power, because everybody can have an answer to any question. What becomes valuable is two things: being able to ask the right question, which often requires deep thinking. And the second element is wisdom, right? Like, is this right or wrong? What's the answer to this? Yes, but, you know, what's the wisdom behind it? And I think luxury hospitality and hospitality companies through this process have this incredible opportunity to really, you know, change their business model, right? Like, out of a sudden, we're not into hedonistic adaptation. We're not into like promoting miswantings and, have these people arrive with their, forecasting errors, and then we have to fix it because the big suite isn't big enough. But we can go into something where people actually, feel that their needs are met, right? Hotels always start with the answers to problems and not with a need. So like you have a big television, right? But then there's a red lamp on the television. So the need of the client to actually sleep isn't met. We're trying to get the answer of like people want a big television, but no, people need to sleep. They need to rest. So it's really reversing the way we look at hospitality as not as something that's trying to, through almost one-upmanship, trying to give people what they want, but trying to reconnect them to what they need.
And it's quite interesting because I moved recently and packing down books, and I found this book from a place called Hygienes. They do this yearly yearbook. And a very good friend of mine, John Mason, gave me this 1%. It's called that book. And then somehow I didn't grasp that, but there's like a section in there where it's also what you need in life is good routines. And the good routines is actually one of them. It's at night you need to go to sleep well. You don't need more input. So it's all about how do you have a routine at night and morning? And he talks about the first thing is rest, sleep, good food and diet, and then you need movement. And that's what needs to be in your routine. That's what you need. But often we are met with a world that wants us to do something different. Yeah. They want us to do maybe the opposite. And they want us to more clicks, or it wants to eat more, or it wants to spend more on luxury items that doesn't really give meaning for a better life. It's not going to move the dial. It's not going to make you feel happier. It's not going to make you give more meaning. But if you do the other things, was his claim, and if you get consistent on that, then you can live a very good life, because then you have headspace to all the craziness and uncertainty that hits you. And it was quite interesting. It was just like, it really fits with you say as well. This is what the 1% you need every day. That's what he talks about.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I said to you before our call, we're finalizing a book. Philippe Krenze and I have written a book around sort of the main societal problems, the situation around luxury hospitality, and what is the answer that we can have. And I think it starts with the realization that we cannot look at the hospitality industry as an island and say, what problems are we dealing with? Luxury hospitality is a representation of society. And a lot of the problems that we have to deal with as a society, we have to deal with as hoteliers, and we are encouraged to and should be encouraged to find solutions, not to our own KPIs, but to the KPIs of society, right? Like, can we understand and react to the big trends and the big societal shifts that we see outside, and how do we align our businesses to it? I will give you one example. Mm-hmm. We have a huge problem that is described in many great books. One of them, Jonathan Hari, told about stolen focus, and this great crisis of attention or lack thereof.
Yeah.
And luxury hospitality, we speak always about experiences and allowing people this like amazing experience, and like being sort of like taken off the floor and just being wowed by all we have to offer. But they're not present. Nobody is present, right? People come to hotels glued to their phones, completely absorbed with the world around them and the information that's bombarding them. And there's the hotelier and says, "Let me take you on this experience." And they're like, "I don't have room for this." Right? So the first step is to say, can we allow people to actually be present for the experience that we're trying to give you? And how can a hotel, through service, build, and offering, allow people to recenter that? So the problem is maybe not what's the best experience, but the question that we need to ask ourselves is, are our clients actually available to the experience? And that's not a problem that is a hotel problem. That's a society problem, that we're completely absorbed at all times And we give away this most valuable of our currencies, which is our attention, to everybody and everything all day long through our smartphones, right? And then you go to these hotels and they almost can't win because people aren't open to this. As we describe a situation in the book, which speaks about a guide in the Louvre Museum in Paris, and there's a woman on her phone, and the guide kindly waits for her, and she says, carry on, I'm listening. But she is not, right? We describe it as, physically present, emotionally not present.
Yeah.
And luxury hospitality and hospitality as such can be a platform to reconnect people to the present.
Yeah, and I guess also it's all about we all know when we don't treat our body well, or we feed it bad food, we look too much in the phone. I guess it's about helping people to get out of these habits around. You talk a bit about we eating too much meat, and that's an interesting thing. What is that going to do to bodies in 10 years? We're actually eating more and more meat. We should actually eat more and more plants because they'll be better for the planet than us. We're consuming more and more. That's really bad for the brain because we're not built to consume all this, especially 24/7. So it's all about what exactly we're putting into our bodies, and therefore we're getting more and more ill without noticing, like the cuts, the death of 1,000 cuts in a way. And I guess that's actually the role hospitality, as you said. It's really interesting because I'm trying to follow you on that journey as well, where hospitality can actually start becoming this vehicle for change. Actually, that's where I get wisdom. That's where I ask myself questions. And that's really what's contributed to the experience more than we have a spa and a lovely breakfast luxury buffet. It's not what it's about. It's actually getting these reflection in your life.
Yeah, a good hotel can be almost like a life's laboratory, right? Like it's a life lab, a good hotel. But I think one of the big changes that we will see is that we have to be very careful that this sort of initiative is not driven by guilt or by preaching people of what they should do because they're living so bad lives and they're so bad to their bodies and they're sick and, eat more carrots, right? Like people don't want to hear it, and I can understand it.
Yeah.
The perception change, you were speaking about meat and plant-based food, is that the reality is that plant-based food often is not good enough. That's why people don't eat it.
Yeah, it's taste.
And if it's taste. It needs to be taste driven. If you go to a restaurant and the plant-based option is the one that doesn't taste or doesn't look appealing, then why would people eat it? If you go to, there's a place in Jerusalem called Tzemach, which is a restaurant by the Machinuda group. There's a chef called Uri Navrong, and Tzemach means vegetable in Hebrew. And you eat there, and you're almost done. You realize you haven't had any meat or any animal product per se, because the food's so delicious. So the invitation is, do you want to eat this? It's the best thing you'll ever eat today. Is it plant-based? Yeah, but who cares? And it's the same with sustainability. Do you want to stay in our hotel? Don't do it because the experience is a bit inferior, but it's sustainable. The best hotel in the world happens to be fully sustainable. It needs to be the better option from a comfort taste level and from a needs level, and not from a sort of preaching, ideological, actual study proven level, because people don't care. And they haven't for decades. And as much as plant-based food is more represented in supermarkets when we go now, the worldwide populations are vegan. I think we're still 2%, right? Like, there's no massive.
I think it's less. I think it's less now, even. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it is because people don't think it's good enough.
Yeah.
And I think that is the access to it, to say, we invite you to an experience that is better what you know. And by the way, it's more sustainable, but it can't be the driver.
It's not the driver, And it's so interesting when you look at, I've been very lucky to interview a lot of people, and you see a connection with what we're talking about now here. They've all, if as a business leader or founders or whatever, they're owner and operators of any hospitality business, they've been focusing on the strongest internal quality of what they're doing, many of them, to create the best product and service. And that's how they get people to come again and again and again. And then within that, there's it's actually the best meat you can source because it's organic and it's actually from a very good farm, and we have the connection ourselves. But that's not the first thing they say. They just try to create the most tasty product or the best experience, the most human connection they can do as a hospitality business. And then all these things come second. Because they are just messages and actually supporting functions, but it's actually doing the best job you can in the first. But that's also simple business, Good internal quality will get good external quality in the long run.
And there's an association again, right? Like in New York, there's an expression, in the States in general, is like, I'll take you for steak dinner. That's a treat, right? Like it's not even about the steak. It's about the element of going to have steak dinner. And it's very interesting because, again, we're focused on, organic, regenerative farming where every cow has a name, but unfortunately, 98% of farming is industrial, right? So it's just not scalable. So as long as people want steak dinner as an association with, I've made it, I'll treat myself, that is the issue. If people say they're going to go for a great plant-based meal and it has the same association to it because it's delicious and, it's a treat and people can't get enough of it because it's so tasty, then eventually the perception will change and these type of foods will be associated with success and celebration. It's a bit like we give our 3-4-year-olds kids sugar-laden cakes to celebrate. So it's a weird thing that we sort of say, we want to celebrate life, and at the same time we give them something that's very unhealthy. But we've it's so linked to the way we live that it's just what it is. And then you have the sugar-free, gluten-free, whatever, yada yada cake that looks terrible, tastes terrible, and nobody ever wants a slice of it. So that nobody will eat that cake because it's healthier. But if you can produce a cake that happens to be healthier, but is more delicious of what we have now, then people might say, I just want the delicious cake, right? I just want the delicious meal. I just want the great shower. I want the great bed linen. I want the great, air conditioning system. They shouldn't care about the fact of how green it is and how sustainable it is, because it will not make the difference for most people when it comes to making a compromise through it, right? But if it's the better option, we'll get better mass adoption to it. And that's really what we focus on with Kepler as a hotel group, is to create aspirational hotels that just happen to be sustainable, that just happen to be plant-based. And with Kepler Academy, we're trying to impart the thinking and the knowledge and the ecosystem that we have built to leading hoteliers that can actively make impact in their businesses. I think very often in hotels, and I've seen it firsthand, me running a hotel, we're very close to the wall, right? We operate the hotels, we go to hospitality conferences, we read hospitality publications, and it's very rare that we actually step away from the wall and say, what is the situation that I'm actually operating in? Like we have a huge problem of demography, right? Like Western societies are shrinking. What does that mean for the job that we need to offer, in a hotel? When I started working in hospitality, we did an assessment center over 2 days with 50 people to choose 10 people who did an apprenticeship unpaid for a year. I mean, today, you have nobody showing up even for a paid internship.
Yeah.
So, but that's fantastic because we can potentially create jobs in hotels that differ from what the hotels look like today, because again, our offering will shift from what people want to what people need. And then with the emergence of artificial intelligence, a lot of the transactional things that we've traditionally done in hotels, and where we've hired people to do quite transactional things, that will go away. So how will we staff a hotel in 10 years? What services will we provide? What conversations will we have? Who will actually work in a hotel, and what conversations do you want to have in a hotel? I feel very often today we operate a hotel more or less like we did 200 years ago. It's the same people doing the same jobs. Yes, there's an app or an iPad or something, but fundamentally, we make a reservation, we check people in and out. We have people who, wish you good morning and how your flight was, and swipe a credit card or take payment, and, and then off they go to the experience. That hasn't changed a lot. But what if it does? And what if hospitality actually embraces a whole new future of what hospitality represents, not as a business, but as a platform, again, to tackle some of life's problems, not on a hotel level, but on a societal level, right? Change the aspiration of what a good lived life looks like. Because a lot of the people who are the 0.5% of the 1%, they already live that way, right? We don't do afternoon tea for these people. They don't eat afternoon tea.
No.
It's like they don't want 8 pillows. They don't eat steak 3 times a day.
No.
They don't, because they know. But they're still being, to some extent, used for something that is being idealized of that's what these people want, right? It's marketing. So luxury hospitality, we need to change to adapt to what the needs are for these people. And that in hindsight will change the perception of what we aspire as luxurious, what we aspire as aspirational.
And it's really interesting. It comes back, and I wrote it down when you said, you said as hotel. I'm thinking like, hospitality businesses. What exactly we need to build / create to meet the needs of the world. And I think often when you make business strategy, typical MBA, you go out and look at the market. What does the consumer want, and what do they need? And actually, they don't know. Sometimes they're totally blind. And I think Bill was Apple's founder as well, wasn't it? That said that they don't know what they want. We need to give them to them, and actually create a need or an understanding about what the need is, and then you can talk about what's that actually the best you could give humanity. In some ways, yes, phone was great, but actually, do we actually really need that? That's the deepest need. And actually, if you can meet some of these basic needs of, helping people to get better sleep, better diets, better conversation, more awareness, more presence, then actually that's really what gives meaning to life. When you strip everything away, what people don't want to lose is those things. Yeah. And that's actually what creates a lot of the health issues around what we do and so on. I think it's a super interesting way of thinking positioning. Instead of thinking about consumers, you're thinking about what does the world actually need us to do to make it a better world. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's actually very reassuring because human needs are constant. They don't change. They haven't changed over like hundreds of years. I mean, if you read script from, 1,000 years ago, people speak about the same needs that human beings need. What changes is trends, right?
Yeah.
Like this is what's on vogue. This is what people want. But what we need to live good lives and to feel good about ourselves as individuals hasn't changed. So that's a really constant and safe guardrail for anybody who would want to build a hospitality business. And even with artificial intelligence, where I feel the world's going to be unrecognizable in many ways in 15 years, human needs won't change.
No.
The feeling of having, meaning in life, having artistic development, spirit-filled development, a sense of belonging, being social with people, having a sense of security for your own self, being in touch with nature, having that doesn't change. It hasn't changed, and it won't change.
Do you think AI can help us get it closer to this if we use it in the right way?
I think so. I think in hospitality, there is a real opportunity here, because a lot of the traditional hospitality businesses, as I mentioned before, are very transactional. So we have to do a lot of things in hotels that AI will be able to do for us. And AI in luxury hospitality will not be sort of an upgrade to a new iPhone or a new app or a new sort of application that will streamline the operation and allow our current front desk staff to spend more time with the client. I do not think that this narrative is correct. I think that artificial intelligence will redefine what systems you have in a hotel, how many systems you will have, arguably only one. Anything that requires a transaction will be done by the artificial intelligence. And humans will do the innately human things, which is creating human to human meaningful relationships, being able to ask human motivated questions, right? What we said before, knowledge is inflationary. The person who asks the right question is arguably wiser than the person who gets an answer out of ChatGPT. So can human help humans to do the difficult human things with more comfort? So this is another very interesting conundrum in luxury hospitality, that we have been speaking about comfort for the last, 100 years, which is clearly motivated by life outside not being comfortable. You know, like luxury hotels had the first elevator, the first air condition, the first running water, food and access, whereas there was a lot of scarcity outside. Today, there's abundance, in most Western democracies outside of luxury hotels. I mean, you can get pound per pound cheaper calories outside of a luxury hotel, obviously, than inside a luxury hotel. So comfort was idealized as something that we should aspire to. The most successful people on the planet, the one thing they don't want is comfort. So there's another great book called The Comfort Crisis that speaks about this. And I think with the development of technology and the way of how hotels become platforms for good lives, what hospitality ultimately will do is help people to do the difficult human things. What are these? Have a healthy mind and a healthy body, be able to have human to human relationships, have a good relationship with yourself. AI can assist you with that, but it can't do it for you, right? AI cannot run you around the block. AI cannot make a food choice for you. AI cannot have you, foster a good marriage for now. I mean, it can assist you, I guess, but we still need to do it, right? That's why I guess people have always run marathons or climbed on mountains or do ultra endurance races, because it's not comfort that gives us this deep satisfaction, but it's the things that are uncomfortable, right? Growing is uncomfortable. So,
and it's so interesting because I'm originally from a Scandinavian country, and I think Scandinavia in general is very comfortable. Yeah. And people, appreciate that, maybe not in the degree they should, actually, how well it is running those countries compared to if you're in countries where there's a bit more difficulties when you travel the world. You see different society models, you see different struggles. And I guess that we want everything to be comfortable is also the parallel, when we stand in different places in the world and all the conflict. This is also that battle of we all need that comfort, but actually we haven't had the conversation about actually discomfort is not healthy for us, because it's a physical thing, or it's money, or it's physical stuff we want because we think it's going to make us more comfortable, but actually it's growing as individuals and building better relationship, all the difficult bit we haven't spent enough time on. And actually, we go back and look at most philosophy, if it's from the Eastern philosophy or Stoic philosophy, it talks about, life is a battle. You have to accept it. And that's where it's the best place to be, because you're growing then. and thereby you're making something meaningful contribution to the world because you're making yourself into a better human. And I don't know what your thoughts are about on that. And I know you're very fascinated by Japanese culture, for example, which is a same kind of philosophy around life and so on.
Yeah, I think it's obviously many hundreds of years ago, sort of kings and queens would have the lifestyle diseases that now we have, because now everybody lives like a king or a queen.
Yeah,
because we have, excess of nutrition. We don't really need to move if we don't need to. Everything can be ordered in. Everything can be consumed with very little effort. And very often, unfortunately, in communities where people are disadvantaged with their income or, sort of how the communities are built, it's even worse. Like the less spending power people have, the more often the environments that they live will lead to this unhealthy, over-consuming, attention-consuming lifestyle that ultimately doesn't make people happy. And again, luxury hospitality and hospitality as such can help lead the way here and say we do not longer need to represent the ideal scenario of a world of scarcity, but we can maybe now, idealize the benefits of living a good life, a healthy life, with so much distress to, society and human health in modern societies, because we, all aimed for sort of the wrong thing for too long and sort of have unfortunately believe that it will make us happy. We, in Kepler, we write a lot about a concept that a friend of mine, John Alexander, wrote a book about called Citizen. And we are in this change at the moment, whereas at the time we had kings and queens, we lived in the subject story. So you're a subject to a ruler, they look after you, they feed you in the best cases, but you have not much agency. Then we went into the consumer story where we buy goods and services for an exchange of money. And relationships are transactional. And Kepler is a citizen company where we allow people to participate in something. And that's a very different business proposition to say, it's not about what goods and services we can sell you, but we allow you to participate in something that is meaningful to your life. It's a different way of looking at it. And I think in many societies, and South Korea was one part of the world, but there's many examples in Ireland and the Scandinavian countries, whereas a lot of the big societal problems are not being solved by governments, so elected by people in small committees, but actually citizen committees, where there's a lot of local engagement, where citizens make decisions for citizens. And I think businesses will embrace that future, or I encourage them to embrace that future more, to say not what goods and services can I sell to somebody, but how can I allow people to participate in something? Which goes interestingly back to my frustration about my own career, to say, what am I contributing to, right? What am I participating in? And I couldn't find a citizen hospitality company in a big capital city. There's great hospitality companies out there that do exactly that, but they very often are not located in the urban centers of the world, but often in more rural destinations. And my thought around this is that they, unfortunately for now, do not get the right notoriety and attention to lead the way for some much more traditional, backward-looking, but very famous urban city hospitality.
And where are you in a decade from now with your journey? What has the hotel group done? What has the academy done to what kind of world do you think we live in? And what kind of impact have you as a team, as a group of people, citizens, made to the industry and thereby also the world outside? What are you hoping for?
So I'm hoping that we can show this new model of hospitality. It's not about amending an existing model. It's really about creating a new model, a model that gives more back than it takes out, a model that idealizes good life choices rather than destructive life choices, a place that is run, as a citizen company by its employees, giving back to the places that they operate in, and the academy really helping to help other people to have this impact. Kepler is not about like trying to keep things for ourselves. It's, we can do so little. And the academy really has been created to create more resonance for this new way of looking at hospitality and helping current luxury hospitality leaders to have impact in their own way in their own businesses. So, contributing to a good future of hospitality, to this next chapter of luxury hospitality, because it will change, right? Artificial intelligence will change all of our lives. The question is, how much are we going to be at the driving seat, and can we use this as a force for good and as a force of making a real positive future out of luxury hospitality and making hospitality jobs one after the most thought after professions for young people coming out of school, right? Like, I want to work in a hotel, because I can do so many things that interests me. And people who live in luxury hospitality, they live good lives, right? They're good human beings. They're interesting human beings. They're not only expanding, but they're actually growing in these hotel companies. And I think that that's the aspiration, right? Not to say hospitality is a job because very often I didn't find something else, or I do hospitality unless I do something else, but to it become a real vocation of society, one of the most meaningful professions and most empowering professions, to contribute to society, really.
Yeah, and I think that comes back to what you talked with as well. Like, how do we build better relationship with ourselves and others? Because that's really back to good citizens and what the job is, yeah, and doing the right thing. Because I think lots of old philosophies, religions talk about doing the right thing, yeah, and how do you do the right thing is actually become the best version of yourself and try to build healthy relationship with others, yeah, and play your part in the world and do your best job. I think that's when we go down to the bottom of it. In this transition we're in, because I think there's one thing that has been this, pandemic, change, and whole turmoil we live in the world. We don't want to go down on the political agenda now. There's no reason for that. But actually, in business, what have you been, because you've gone through huge transformation, like within a short term of a couple of years from where you were to where you are now. What has been the major learning in all this for you as an individual? Because it seems like you've done some thinking, yeah? You took time to think about things, and now you're trying to put all that to life.
I think good things take time. There's no shortcut to things. And there shouldn't be. Because very often, and that's also an often told phrase, but it's very true, the destination is often not as important as the way to the destination. Like, try to write a book. My God. I mean, like the first time we spoke about it was 5 years ago. It's hard. Good things are hard.
Yeah.
And I think that's really, I enjoy that process. I have a deep sense of urgency for the mission that Kepler and Kepler Academy has. And I do whatever I can every day to advance the mission. And at the same time, I know that if you don't build the foundations right, if you don't allow the time it takes to build the foundations, if you don't enlist and enroll the right talent to join you on your mission, you're not going to go very far, right? There's this African proverb, right? If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, take others with you. That's learning for me. It's also deeply gratifying. It's deeply gratifying to work for something that you deeply believe in. And I would recommend to anybody who wants to do their own thing, don't pick out something that sort of seems a good business opportunity, but solve a problem for you and your friends, right? And because it's hard. Yeah. It's like leadership, right? Like, leadership is hard. I've always saw people at the Beaumont who wanted a promotion to a leadership position said, this is the most difficult thing you'll ever do.
Yeah.
It's like, and it starts every day again. And you can have people sign as many SOPs as you want. It's like, it's hard. It's one of the hardest things you ever do. And I think for anybody who is a parent, it's also the hardest thing you'll ever do. It's the most rewarding thing you'll ever do, but it's also the hardest thing you ever do. Yeah. And so I've learned that as well. Like, difficult things and meaningful things are difficult, but the beauty is in the difficulty. It's in stepping out of comfort, right? And doing your own business, you clearly step out of your own comfort zone.
It's quite interesting. Some years ago, I can't remember when, but it was my mentor, Chris, who still is one of my mentors and my go-to wisdoms people. And he said, you have in life, if you want to live a good life, he said, be a good leader or build a great family, you have to fall in love with it's relentless. And that's just how it is. And if you can start falling in love, it took me a long time to fall in love with that because of course, everybody wants it easy. We either want pleasure or joy, yeah, or pleasure or pain. We want to avoid pain and we want pleasure, yeah. That's what we want as human beings. Till we start to understand, like running a marathon, the satisfaction it gives, even though you get injured. I completed the London Marathon, as you just said before. And how do we fall in love with the relentlessness and the pain more than seeking the pleasure straight away, the dopamine? Because actually, it's, as you said, if you get a bigger room, it's not going to make you more happy. I love that kind of thinking about that as the foundations as well, that it actually has to be hard and you have to be in doubt and all that stuff.
And it's so interesting because the way you phrase it right now is you say what you want, right? Mm-hmm. It's again what you want, what you perceive of what you want. And then you run the marathon and what you actually need is the accomplishment of something very difficult.
Yeah.
So it's really about giving people what they need, being attuned to people what they need, rather than trying to give them their next dopamine fix of what they want, right? And it's very interesting because we did this very big study of guest comments because we sort of tried to define so what is luxury, right? Like, what is it? And we, thought about this long and hard and realized, well, let's ask the clients. So we worked with 25 leading luxury hotels and assembled almost 2,000 guest comments. Product came up 2% of the comments and half of it was negative. So, we built like the luxury hotel room is double the size compared to the 1970s. Every hotel needs a pool. Every hotel needs a 3 Michelin star restaurant. But, the numbers, 4% of hotel clients use the pool. 3% of hotel clients use the Michelin star restaurant. So people don't want it. They don't even want it and they don't need it. But we feel that's what they want. So I think it's very helpful as an exercise to always go back to that sort of, situation to say, what is it that we're trying to solve here? What's the need that this investment will solve? Not to say what's the problem to something people want or the solution to the problem that somebody wants, but what need are we solving? There's these two fundamental questions in hospitality, I think. Who's the client and what do they need, right? And any luxury business or any business that answers that question really well to say, do I know who my client is and what do they need? And reverse engineer it. I found that very helpful. We don't have the time today, but we've done a lot of that thinking at the Beaumont at the time and, try to change the way we operate the hotel quite drastically with these principles in mind. And it worked.
Yeah, and you can ask that question. I was thinking about it in leadership or just writing down, as you were saying that. It's also in leadership, you can ask that. What does the employee, need?
Yeah,
not what they want, because they want a pay rise, but that's probably not what they need always. Of course, everybody needs more money as inflation goes up, but actually what is it that they need? And when you start thinking about leadership that way, and then actually leadership maybe also come easier because then you're asking the right questions. And that's actually what leadership is about, asking the right question to unlock people's performance. Well, as you said, we will go on for an absolutely marathon. There's 2 questions I wanted to ask you before we finish off, because I think they're really key from the whole conversation we had, because you referred to a lot of books. And if you were giving an advice on one book, you would give away 9 out of 10 times to people, read this book, because that really has shifted something in me. We all have these books, but I know you have a lot of books.
Which one? Well, I like Meditations from Marcus Aurelius. I mean, who knows if he wrote it, right? Like, but the Stoic philosophers, I think Seneca has another great one.
Yeah,
it's very timeless, and you can sort of go in and out and, read different chapters. I think, they're very good.
Yeah.
What a Man Thinketh is a good book. I like a book called Undo It. It's Dean Ornish. He's a medical doctor. But he speaks about sort of the foundations of a happy life, right? And to say, have good relationships, eat good food, move more, and have meaning in your life. It's the Japanese ikigai, right?
Yeah.
To an extent, do something that really fulfills you. But it's a practical book. It's very different to the other 2 books that I've mentioned. It's a more practical book, but, even somebody who isn't plant-based or vegan or whatever, it's a good book. And it's really just about, the good life is very simple, but it's very hard to do. And the more crutches we can give ourselves to do it, the better it is.
Great. Undo It. I'll definitely put it on my list. I'm a big reader of Seneca and Marcus Aurelius once every year. What is the one question you wished I've asked you? What would be the question and what would be the answer?
We've had quite I think it's maybe, what does hospitality teach us about being human? And I think it goes back a little bit to what we've said about this element of hospitality at its best is a school of life. And that true luxury is really sort of this element of being present, having empathy, having meaningful connection. Yeah, to change hospitality, not to a business where you can buy goods and services, but to a place where, we help you to do the difficult human things a little bit better. In comfort, I mean, it's very important to say that. And also with the guest comments, right? Like they don't comment on the material, but it needs to be good enough, right?
Yeah.
Good enough. So obviously if you have a room that is too hot or too cold, or you have a mattress that doesn't work, or the food is not, that's a problem. Material stuff needs to be there. Like you need to be obviously on your feet to provide, a project. But as an investor, I think the art is to invest in the material element of your project exactly to the point where it's good enough. And then you stop and you spend not a penny more, because it doesn't make a difference. But it can't be substandard, right? And it's very difficult to do something that's good enough, right? Because the standards are so high these days.
And understand where that tipping point is, I guess.
But no, it's not that will create the competitive advantage. I think it's the school of life element to hospitality that will draw people back to your hotel more than, I guess, any loyalty card will ever do.
And I guess also that comes back to, that means that the quality of the relationship there's within those teams and the way you lead people radically has to change as well. You have to ask different questions to be able to facilitate that. Yeah. It's a very different than delivering transactional operational things. Yeah.
And what do you need as an employee, as a leader, right? Like, I think we have traditional sort of leadership careers that will bring you to the very helm of a great hotel. Are we equipped properly? Do we learn the right things? Do we speak to the right mentors? What is it that we need to be actually equipped to lead a big hospitality business? I see, teachers, professors, like people who maybe work with children for a long time, like I'm not saying that these people are going to do your check-in, because you're not going to do a check-in in the future, but like, who are the people that you actually want to meet, and what sort of experiences and sort of what books do you need in your shelf to be able to add value to the client? Once the technical element and the transactional element is taken out of it,
Yeah.
what does the GM of the future look like? Who's that profile? I would argue that these are people that would never consider to be a hospitality professional today. And I think a lot of hospitality professionals today won't get very far with the educational system that brings them to these positions today. But it's a huge opportunity, and it's really, I mean, I couldn't be more excited about it.
Because also if you go on that journey, you create a very good life for yourself, yeah? Because you work with what you really need and not what you think you want, yeah? I love that. So thank you so much, Jannes, and I'm sure we're gonna touch base in the future, because it's so exciting to follow the journey you and the team is on and what you're trying to create and build. So sending you and the team power and energy for the journey ahead. Where can people connect with you or the group or the Hospitality Academy if they want to know about, I want to learn more about this, I want to join the academy? Where do they go?
Great. They can go to Learn Kepler. So learn and Kepler, like Johannes Kepler, the mathematician and astrologer from the 16th century. And then I'm on LinkedIn. I should be more on Instagram, but I'm not. So I guess LinkedIn, learnkepler.com is the best way to get in touch with me.
Great. Thank you so much again, and sending you power and energy.
Thanks for the opportunity, Michael. Much appreciated.